Okay, Bindu, I thought we'd take a look at the internet weather for this week. It's a lot of repeated stuff that we've talked about a lot over the past couple of weeks, but I'm going to throw in one new thing that's kind of small, but people should pay attention to. But in terms of the most probed ports from a scanning activity, Telnet is way up at the top, which is usual. SSH, you got your Microsoft SQL Server, Windows file sharing 445 TCP. 8545 TCP is the Ethereum wallet. It's a wallet that has a vulnerability. There's a small number of actors out there scanning for this still, trying to see if they could steal some Ethereum cryptocurrency off of those people. Remote desktop protocol is always very popular as a scanning port because they can get remote access to your machine. Web, FTP we've seen up in the top 10 quite a bit lately. 1911 TCP is the Tritium Niagara Fox, which this is mostly good guy activity scanning for this, but this is a building automation protocol in the IoT space, industrial control system. The most sources probe is usually related to botnet related activity because you got a lot of sources doing scanning in concert with each other. There's a lot of stuff here that we see all the time, but we're going to take a look at 5431 TCP again. And we're going to also take a look at 81 TCP. Those are the two I kind of highlighted here because they're more interesting. The other ones, we know what's going on. But before we jump into these, there was one kind of below the fold of the top 20 or top 10, down in the top 20-ish. There was an interesting one that I kind of noticed here that I thought I would point out because we've seen a lot of interest in database servers being targeted. This one I thought was interesting because there's a small number of sources. If you're using Redis, which is a database type of engine, you might want to pay attention to this because there is some actor out there and what they were doing, and I kind of noticed they're scanning these ports here, 6380, 6381, 6382, and 6383. Those are, especially the first two, are well known associated with Redis, which are in orange and red here. So if you're running Redis, I would take a careful look at that. The next one was the 5431 TCP. This is the mystery that I've been trying to figure out for the past few weeks here. The scan sources are geographically dispersed. It might be related to Broadcom's universal plug and play because they actually listen on 5431 TCP. The thing that's really strange about this is it really stops and starts quickly, which is not typical for most botnets. Usually they'll run for like at least a few hours. This is like they run for maybe an hour and a half or an hour and they stop. And they start really quickly all at the same time and they stop really quickly at the same time, which is not really typical. The other really odd thing is when you look at the scanning traffic, you have these devices, all these whatever they are devices trying to scan destination port 5431. They're setting their source port statically to port 6. So you'll see source port 6, destination port 5431. So I kind of lined up this activity so you could see, because I can't do it in one chart, that they do line up, and I could see this from our flow data. So it's a little weird. Don't know what to make of that exactly. Why this traffic exists. I don't think there's actually a lot of things listening on this port that are going to answer. So I don't know. I think that it's a weird one that I can't really account for yet.
Yeah, but a pretty persistent one looking at the intervals there, right?
Yes, yeah, it definitely stops and starts, and I was trying to analyze to figure out, is there something telling them to stop and start all at once? And I wasn't able to figure that out. I will redact a couple of things I said before. I said a lot of them have port 4567 open, but when I started to look more at this, not as many were showing up like that today when I was doing my analysis. I also said previous week, many of the scan sources appear to have this micro HTTP broadband routers web server running. I did another analysis, I'm not sure, but in any event, it's pretty much most of the world in terms of who have devices. So I don't know what it is yet, but we still need to figure this out. I still have not solved the mystery on port 5431 TCP. Would like to get to the bottom of that. I'm hoping it's benign, but it's a lot of activity for something to be benign. So my gut says it's probably not. The last one that we have here was the port 81 TCP. This is an alternate HTTP web server, and I'm showing a 120-day view. This port is used a lot by a lot of different things. But there is a very well-known remote code execution exploit that can be leveraged against the go-ahead web server, which is also a very popular kind of embedded web server. It's a little tiny, lightweight web server that's in a lot of these IoT type devices, notably in the security camera, DVR type things, that you can get. If you have devices like that and you haven't already, you should make sure they're patched and that you're not using any kind of default password type things on those, which typically happens a lot, especially in these IoT type spaces.
And I think, what is interesting from everything that you've been saying, right? Again, back to the default passwords within databases, make sure that you don't have unnecessary services running. All these IoT devices that you have, include them as part of your scanning overall, and make sure that, you're giving them the same sort of security measures that you would do for any other system within your organization. Right? Because we are tracking, this sort of scanning activity, and, when you're showing us this whole 120 days, 60 days timeline, these don't look like they're stopping.
No, yeah, definitely not. In a lot of cases, you see that they have periods of spikes and whatnot with increased activity. Definitely things for people to keep on top of and make sure that they get patched.
Treat your cameras, your databases, your IoT devices that you have, all as part of your security risk profile, right? Each device that you are bringing in, it might have a functional use, but think of it as a mini computer, if you will, right? This is connecting somewhere. You are giving it access. It is part of your network.